films. Okay, great. Welcome back to Finding Her Voice, a podcast about women in film by women who love film. As always, I am joined by Editor-in-Chief Gabrielle Bondi and film and television writer AJ Caulfield to highlight, celebrate, and discuss films directed by women. From the very best and most significant in the cinematic canon to personal, underseen favorites, our hope is to touch upon as many films and talents as we can that may be undervalued and or hopefully provide listeners to more options to add to their watch list for 52 Films by Women Challenge. Or by the 52 Films by Women Challenge. So, with the Avengers Infinity War about to be released, followed by the highly anticipated Deadpool 2 by some, I should add after highly anticipated, and the origin story Solo, we're looking to readdress the problem Hollywood has with rewarding male directors based on promise rather than continued examples of excellence. Women need to prove they're able to take on a big budgeted film. Men simply need to inspire the studio with their gumption. It's a double standard that's been prevalent for far too long and one that I don't see being let up anytime soon. Which is a pessimistic take, but I think it takes a long time for certain things to be dismantled. And I think this is one of them, as evidenced by Kathleen Kennedy continually giving white men power over Star Wars films. But before we dive deeper into that issue, the opening question is kind of a straightforward one, since we'll be talking a lot about Marvel and other superhero films, I imagine. What is our general stance on superhero films? Do we like them? Do we hate them? Are we meh? AJ, I honestly feel like I don't know your stance on this. So
that's interesting because I work in like kind of like nerdy entertainment and I keep up with the films a lot and I'm super into comics and everything. I am pro superhero film, especially in recent years, because I feel like they're getting better and more nuanced and it's not just about like action, bam, people beating each other up. There's more to it. And I'm definitely like a Marvel kind of person. For me, they just get me more like excited. I guess the stories, and with the exception of Wonder Woman, DC hasn't been as like exciting. But yeah, I'm definitely pro superhero films. Yeah, especially when they're good. Like Spider-Man: Homecoming was one of my top films last year.
Same.
It was just so good. And Tom Holland, not to be dramatic, I would die for you. Pure. Please just be Spider-Man for like 40 more years. Thank you.
Oh,
that's my request.
And it's funny because I knew you write for, some certain more like geek culture, I guess is the way to put it, sites, but I feel like I've never talked to you about superhero films. And for some reason, I feel like because it comes up in the chat a lot, which me and Gabby are in more for the main young folks chat, I feel like I see her opinions on it more often.
Yeah.
But Gabby, how about you? I don't know if you're at the point of being kind of fatigued by them or if it's still kind of a pick and choose.
Yeah, I'm getting a little fatigued. I have to be honest. I mean, I love Jessica Jones and I just can't like get past the first episode. But as far as films go, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a case by case basis. So like I'll see them all just because like I'm one of those people who just like know that they're all like part of like are in order and you have to watch them all. And I'm like, well, I don't want to miss anything. But I'm definitely more excited for ones up. Like I was definitely excited for Black Panther and I really enjoyed it. But I wasn't so excited for Thor Ragnarok, even though I love Taika Waititi and just was like, okay. And then I keep forgetting Ant-Man's coming out with a new movie.
Well, that's good.
Like I'm not even excited for Avengers, and I keep calling it Infinity War, and it's Infinity. I'm like Infinity War, and you're like, "What do you mean Infinity?" I'm like, Infinity War. It's finite, okay. But anyway, no, I don't know. I'm not like jazzed about it. Maybe if like if good reviews come out, like from people that I know who aren't like so easily majested by this stuff, it might be piqued my interest. But other than that, I'm like, all right. Like, I'm gonna like, all right. Like, I'm not hating on them, but I'm not like super excited for them. I'm just like, I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, I I really get excited, and I think
So do I.
Yeah, like, I mean, granted, it's split because I have so signed off from the Marvel TV shows at this point. Like, I haven't loved one since the first half of Jessica Jones, and before that, it was the first season of Daredevil before his friends got awful.
Mhm.
And then, like, if he didn't have the worst supporting characters ever, I'd be fine with it. And before that, it was Agent Carter. So I feel like the Marvel shows, I really like, I just don't even give them a chance anymore because I'm just gonna be let down. Whereas I'm really into the DC shows still. Like, I still watch, or maybe I'm not. Do I? I'm just into the CW and I group them all together. But like, I was really into The Flash for a long time. I was really into Legends of Tomorrow and Supergirl for a long time. But my big thing is still those Marvel movies. And I think it's just because beyond the fact that I'm really in love with these characters at this point, the last couple have really proven to me that they're going in a different direction now. And I'm not sure where that direction is headed, but it does make me think that the studio slowly, mind you, is coming to terms with the fact that to stay current, they need to be a little different, or they need to kind of grow with the audience. So, to compare even back to Guardians 2 with Spider-Man Homecoming to Thor Ragnarok to Black Panther, they have a structure that is similar with Marvel and that is kind of mainlined by Marvel, but they're starting to feel separate and different, and there's different things I love about each. And I mean, I think the big takeaway though for me is like, I feel like a kid. You go to these films and you're just completely like sucked in, and it's this big escapism. And I love serialized stories. Like, I love getting to grow with characters. So getting to grow with these like larger than life characters is always really exciting for me. But I mean, I think I have no real actual like insightful thing to say other than I do love them, and I know I just do. I unabashedly love these films. I'm so stoked about Avengers that is not even funny, and is one of the few ones that I'm just like not going to read anything until I see it. And sometimes I don't care about being spoiled because whatever, I suck. But mind you, I'm also reviewing this one, spoiler, and I just think I'm gonna love it. So unless they really drop the ball.
I mean, can I bring something up?
Yeah.
Like, I think part of the reason why I'm not you're like, oh no. Okay, no, one thing I think I'm not excited about it is like I feel like there's no real stakes for Infinity War. And like,
Really?
I just feel like no one's gonna die. Like,
I think a lot are gonna die.
Oh yeah, I think it's gonna be like,
really? You think they're gonna do it? Because I feel like
I think Captain America
tap out of it like all the time, and I would really. I mean, let's just put it this way: I'll be very surprised if someone like one of the main core members dies.
I mean, I agree with you that they have done nothing up till now to prove to us that you are not right.
yeah,
like you're.
But I want them to die. I just feel like I feel like okay, I'm gonna end this movie and they're gonna be okay. Yeah.
So I think. Sorry, but what were you? I cut you off.
No, I was just saying, like, I was just reiterating what I said, that I go into these movies expecting the hero to be okay at the end. Like, I'm not afraid for them.
So I'm really scared that Tony Stark's going to die. But I also think he's absolutely going to, and that any other way is going to be the wrong way. But I would be very surprised, like ridiculously surprised, if by the end of, let's not say this first one, let's say Avengers 4 or whatever, if Captain America or Iron Man is not dead. And I think it's the only way to end out this full story. I mean, mind you, I'll be writing an article closer to the release about why Tony Stark needs to die in these movies. But Yeah, I think it's gonna be a bit of a bloodbath, at least for one of the films, and bloodbath in a like PG-13 superhero type way. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hoping is that, I mean, I don't want him to die, but I think that Captain America is going to die, and I hope that they take what happens in the comics, where Bucky actually becomes the new Captain America.
Oh,
I
we
think that would be
something. Oh no.
Oh no, really?
I want Falcon to become Captain America. But that's a whole other
okay.
That's a whole other podcast.
I would be okay with that. I will accept that. I just hope that if he does die, that the character doesn't die like with Chris Evans.
But wouldn't it be really depressing if he does die? And like beyond the fact that we love him, in that like he had this life that was miserable, and then he became a hero, and then he sacrificed himself, and then he came back, and he's done nothing else since being alive than save other people.
That's very Captain America, though.
Huh?
That seems like very in line with his character, though.
I know, but
he's sticking to his brand.
He needs vacation. Some me time. But yeah, no. I mean, I definitely think it'll be one of those two. But
they should bring Chris Pine in.
Yes.
And have him be the
you know what? I almost thought that our opening question for this should be who's the best Chris, but I was like, nah, we'll save that for a different one.
Oh, I could 45 minutes on who's the best Chris.
And all of it with like changing our minds the whole time. But we should get on to like the subject, I guess.
Yeah.
This is it. But so the big thing, I guess, the point of this one is that there are so many male filmmakers who direct these big budgeted films for superhero films or genre films or whatever, and it's all due to their promise and not their experience. And you have to contrast that to female directors who only get a chance, like let's say like Ava DuVernay, who only got to do A Wrinkle in Time after proving herself with Selma, Middle of Nowhere, I Will Follow, and 13th. You know, she had to have this stack of films that were great to prove that she could handle A Wrinkle in Time. And even when A Wrinkle in Time comes out and people don't like it, all of a sudden people are going like, oh, well, maybe she's just not actually a good filmmaker. It's like, are you kidding? You know, whereas a big budgeted film fails directed by a man, it's usually like, what else is wrong with this movie that we can't attribute to him so that we can hire him again? So I mean, that's my big issue. And the examples I have are things like John Watts, who did this little independent film called Cop Car and then got to do Spider-Man Homecoming, versus an Ava DuVernay, or Colin. Somebody else say the last name.
Trevor.
Okay, that didn't sound right either. Who did Safety Not Guaranteed and then went to Jurassic World and then went to Rogue One, versus a Gina Prince Bythewood, who did Love and Basketball and Beyond the Lights, and finally is getting to do that Cloak and Dagger show, you know? And I just think the discrepancy is obnoxious. I think it's obvious, but I know, AJ, you have some particular
insight
against the Colin Trevorrow, whatever.
Trevorrow.
Yeah. That doesn't sound right to me, but I'll believe you because I suck at this. So, what are your thoughts on it?
So for me, I definitely agree that it takes a lot more for a woman to prove herself, to be able to handle, I put that in quotations, handle like a big film. Whereas with a man, it's like, okay, you've done a good job, and it's not like discrediting men and their accomplishments, but
we can do that.
Yeah. So they just get kind of, it's just not as harsh. Like if they fail, it's not really their fault, which kind of sucks. But so yeah, Colin Trevorrow went from Safety Not Guaranteed to Jurassic World, and I think we may have misspoke by saying he was involved with Rogue One. At least in my understanding, I don't believe that he was involved with Rogue One.
Who was I thinking then?
Gareth Edwards.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're wrong. I was wrong. I mean,
But
I got him and those two mixed up, but he's another example.
But he was attached to Star Wars Episode 9.
Yeah.
So Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy, she was going to work on Jurassic World. But then she was busy doing The Force Awakens, which obviously, if she works at Lucasfilm, you're going to focus on Star Wars. So Trevorrow was tapped as director of Star Wars Episode 9, and then he was let go last year. And it was reported that it was for creative differences, but then Vulture published a report where an insider with direct knowledge of the productions of Trevorrow's, workings on Jurassic World, and apparently he worked on the Book of Henry as well. Apparently he was let go from Episode 9 for being egotistical and difficult. The individual said, and I quote, I'll just read the whole thing. During the making of Jurassic World, Trevorrow focused a great deal of his creative energies on asserting his opinion. But because he had been personally hired by Steven Spielberg, nobody could say you're fired. Once that film went through the roof and he chose to do Henry, Trevorrow was unbearable. He had an egotistical point of view, and he was always asserting that. The individual also said that Trevor was very, very difficult, and apparently the relationship he had with the top brass at Lucasfilm was strained from the start. The various script drafts that they did on Episode 9 didn't help the situation, but it was ultimately his attitude that allegedly pushed things over the edge. So him kind of feeling overly confident in his filmmaking skills because of what he had done with Jurassic World, it turned the working environment on Episode 9 into not a good situation.
Yeah.
So
and can you imagine the difficult woman narrative? We can actually, because it's been done. That would be given a female director if this had been her story. Like if she had been accused of being egotistical on set.
She would not, I don't think that she would have a career after
Correct.
that. No one would want to, everyone, she would be like labeled and pretty much thrown aside and no one would want to hire her.
But Colin Trevorrow he's still in the Jurassic World franchise. Like he's still good.
Mm-hmm. And that wasn't even that great of a movie. Like it was really relying on nostalgia and like people like brand recognition, and that was it.
Yeah, and all it did was start arguments. You know,
if running heels or not. Yeah.
And one of the most notable parts of those movies was the scene where Katie McGrath's like assistant character is brutally murdered, and it felt like some weird or brutally killed or whatever. It felt like a weird punishment to a female character for not being like instantly lovable, and especially in a series that typically had done well by female characters. Mm-hmm. So like that's the most notable thing from that movie too. So, and I liked Safety Not Guaranteed.
So did I
too. You know, I thought it was charming. I really liked Jake Johnson in it, but I also just think I really love Jake Johnson. But so I didn't see the Book of Henry. I spared myself that.
That was okay, I have to admit it was a terrible movie, but one of the most enjoyable terrible movies I've ever saw. It was so bad. I saw him and I'm like, is this really happening? Like, did you just do this? Like everyone's sobbing in the theater and I'm like, what the hell? This is so weird. Like what? It was just crazy. It was so crazy. I mean, I have to just say I enjoyed that part.
Now I want to see it.
I don't still. I just want to trust your word on it.
It does a total 180 in the middle, and you're just and then it just goes down this path of what the fuck.
Yeah, everything I read about it. I was like, this doesn't sound real. It sounds like a fake story that The Onion made, or their spec script or something. Looking at some of the directors of recent years that have been given these big breaks from either nothing or going from like independent film to a big budgeted film, who out of them do you think really left a mark? Like who justified being chosen based on promise? Because the only two that I could really think of that I think left their own individual stamp and was able to kind of dodge, you know, the kind of streamline, you know, aesthetic that Marvel has was, I thought, Rian Johnson.
I was going to say that.
Huh?
I was going to say that.
Oh, okay. I thought he was a really, really good choice for The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought Taika Waititi for Ragnarok was, and I would say Ryan Coogler for Black Panther, but I think him having Creed before it.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of on the same, I thought it was kind of on the same level, like name-wise or like appeal-wise, but I also think he more than justified being chosen. Like, I think if it hadn't been him, it still would have been a good movie, but I think his vision and how his own take on it elevated it to something more special. So I think those three are the ones that kind of have come from independent backgrounds that really justified being chosen.
Mm-hmm. And I think, at least for me, what I appreciate about Rian Johnson, and I'm not saying that I fell in love with The Last Jedi by any means. You know, there are Star Wars films that I like better, but what I really appreciate about Johnson is his follow-up to the backlash and kind of the fan reaction that the film has received. He has kept such a level head and like very calm, and has said, you know, I understand the backlash isn't coming from like a negative place. It's just coming from a place of like really caring about the franchise and wanting to, you know, see the characters in a certain way. And he even just recently mentioned that he's not going to let the backlash influence his new trilogy. And he's just going to try to make like good, enjoyable films. And that I just enjoy that he's not like hitting back and being like, you're wrong and I'm right. I'm the director. Like, I made this movie. Shut up.
Yeah,
so,
which would be really easy for him to do.
Yeah, because I mean, he just directed a Star Wars film. Like, he could easily do that. But I don't know.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, huh? I do think that he was a good choice based on promise, and I think that he'll continue to deliver.
So I mean, honestly, The Last Jedi is actually my favorite Star Wars film.
Oh wow!
So I do have that difference. But I think what made him such a strong choice was that it felt like the first Star Wars director, not necessarily film in terms of quality, but just direction-wise, it was the first time I felt like it was actually directed by somebody who had a visual vision. God, that's a terrible sentence to end it that way. But like, you know, like a perspective. Like they had a very specific aesthetic that they were going for. It wasn't just simply to kind of tell the story. And that, you know, like it was very much visual storytelling. And I think that's really important. But that's why he's one of my choices for sure. Gabby, did you have different ones or were they kind of similar?
No, I mean, I really liked Garrett Edwards, like what he did with Rogue One. I think visually it was very stunning.
Yeah.
But I did hear that there was some issues and reshoots and someone else taking over. I'm not really up to date on that, so I'm not really sure if he deserves the credit for it or not. But I also did like his I think the film that got him on the map was Monsters, which I thought was very good. And he ended up doing Godzilla afterward, which I also liked. So I guess he would be one that I'm not like really upset about. But I agree. I really like Rian Johnson. I think he kind of proved himself to me with Last Jedi because I didn't really care for Looper or the Brothers Bloom.
Have you seen Brick?
I haven't seen Brick yet. So.
Add that to your list because I didn't like Looper or the Brothers Grimm either, but I really love Rick and his episodes of Breaking Bad. And those are really good. That informed, you know, my expectations, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I think Allie, for you and I, since we are really passionate about Spider-Man Homecoming and kind of the new iteration of Spider-Man. I'm really happy that they're bringing back John Watts for the sequel.
No, definitely.
So
I think I like there are things that I wish they had done. Like these are such micro things, but there are little things that I wish they had done different. But overall, I think he nailed the energy level that is needed. Like he is a fumbling, ridiculous teenage boy. And I think the energy matched that. So I'm really glad that they're bringing him back too. And yeah, I just think it's a perfect match in that case, which I didn't expect when I read that he was being signed on. I was like, he's done nothing.
Yeah, I was like not enthusiastic.
Yeah, I had wanted. Oh, who had I wanted? I'd wanted Gillian Robespierre from Obvious Child. I thought she could have done a really great job. I just thought her tone and how she told stories would have fit it. And I remember really wanting her, so I was kind of disappointed, even though it was a long shot, like meaning not a shot in hell. But like. But I am glad. Like he was one of the few that has proven me wrong. I guess.
I mean, I don't know. I think Anne Fletcher could have done Spider-Man: Homecoming because it's very in line with the kind of film she does. She does like a lot of like those upbeat romantic comedy types.
Yeah.
Or action comedies. So, but I mean, I haven't watched Cop Car. I just thought like I really liked Spider-Man: Homecoming. I think a lot of what I liked had to do with just the cast, their energy, and the story itself. Like I thought it was very like well written and just funny and relevant. But I mean, I felt like it could have been directed by anyone. Nothing like visually stood out for me in that film.
Yeah.
So sorry, John Watts.
I think he'll be fine. And the only other director that I just thought of when you mentioned Godzilla, or you mentioned Monsters, which made me think of Godzilla because it's the same director, right? That one's the same.
Yes.
Okay. God, it's like I'm so off my game right now. But it made me think of Kong Skull Island and how that director had only done the Kings of Summer before.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, and I kind of think it showed in the film. You know,
he had like one great scene in that movie, and that was it.
Are we thinking of the same one? Because I thought the one where they're running through the swamp and it's like all the green smoke and whatever.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, like that was visually cool. But I couldn't tell you what happens. Like, other than like monsters fight each other or whatever. And Brie Larson is given nothing to do. So that's a case where I'm like, this guy? Like, really? But yeah, that was kind of one of my others that I just thought like easily could have gone to somebody else. And one of the other big things we were talking about was the idea of how there's a lot of TV to film directors, male directors. So we have people like Joss Whedon and the Russo brothers. And like Joss Whedon was doing things like Buffy and Angel and Firefly. And the Russo brothers were doing what? Community? And I just think, and then you flip it and it's many female directors go from film to television. So in this case, with TV often being seen as being lesser by film folks. I'm not saying that's right at all, but it's like, it's the reason people like to say that Twin Peaks is a movie because they want to justify how much they loved it. Does this show how women are seen in the industry, or is this more just the dynamic storytelling available in television? Because I kind of think it's a mix, but I definitely think it's because there's just more options for women in TV.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a mix. I mean, definitely there's sexism at play here. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be seeing this trend, and
ultimately have a podcast.
Yeah, basically. So like, and I think TV offers more options for women to kind of tell stories, and there's just a lot more of it too in general, like compared to film. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's kind of. It's a little annoying, but I'm also grateful that I get to see. I mean, TV is the most accessible entertainment for me, so I'm excited that I get to see, their handiwork, so easily and so frequently, from my home, or from my cell phone or wherever I'm watching it. And I think like you know, we mentioned like, you know, Mimi Leader and Leslie Linka Glatter and Karen Kusama. And then there's also Ava DuVernay tweeted out the other day, Pat Carduso, who directed Real Women Have Curves, which I talked on last month's podcast about, and how she's directing an episode of, what is it, Queen Sugar?
Queen
Is that
Sugar.
what? Yeah, Ava's show. So, and saying how she, like, for years was not getting hired, and now she's doing TV. So, I mean, it just proves that I think it's mostly sexism, and I think because they can't get films, they just look for TV because that's where the jobs are.
Yeah, and are there shows that you kind of see more female directors than others? Like I know Jessica Jones season 2, it was all the episodes were directed by women, right?
Yeah, the second season, yeah.
The second season. And I noticed like little Hulu comedies like Casual. I notice a lot of female directors that I'm just aware of, and it's kind of it's a weird thing to celebrate because, again, it's coming from a place of it's because they're not getting these opportunities elsewhere. But it is nice to see them kind of celebrated in this way still. And that's my problem. It's like, because I don't want their voices to be diminished on television for the sake of them getting films, but I wish it was an even spread. You know, they should be able to do both, like male directors so often are. But AJ, I don't want to get in the way of your thoughts on this, perhaps.
No, I definitely agree. And it just, our discussion of the previous point, tying into this one, I do think that it's a matter of sexism, of viewing, okay, we'll give a man, even though maybe he hasn't had as much experience directing as a woman, we're going to give him this big action movie because men know action and they know how to like deliver. And if we put a female in the director's chair for this big action movie, maybe she won't deliver as well. And we're trying to target our male audience and things like that. So I think that maybe that's one explanation for why men who haven't had as much directing experience do get like the big action ones. And then women will have to do dramas and documentaries and prove themselves as serious storytellers and directors before they're given the chance to, oh, wow, like she knows her stuff. Let's see what she can do with this. And I think maybe one of the reasons why women turn to television is because they have been doing film for so long and they're like, well, this is what I'm really good at, and I'm not getting the opportunity to do huge action things on the big screen. I can do superhero stuff and more diverse stuff on television because the opportunities are there for me.
And I feel like television is a place, and this is kind of not backed up by a lot of research on my part, but I do feel like you see more established directors, and they're not necessarily directors that we know of as much, because I feel like TV directors just don't get the same level of notoriety. But I feel like because of the pace that television works at, I feel like more often than not, they're going to want people that have that experience. And since, like you said, AJ, these female directors have been working for years, they're just going kind of under-recognized and not given the same outlets to kind of break out, that it does make sense for them to go there. It's just unfortunate that it's kind of a like a last case scenario, you know, like it's like it's the place they fall into rather than the place they're leading up to go, which is unfortunate.
I guess, I mean, the silver lining of this discussion, maybe we can take away, is Ava DuVernay was just confirmed to direct DC's New Gods.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's like, yes, we're getting accolades, like it's good, but I do think that, yeah, there's a lot of trouble going on. But I agree with you guys in saying that television is a lot more accessible, in terms of opportunities for women, especially because, you know, I think that maybe I'm, you know, overstepping a bound in saying that women tend to flourish in writing longer form narratives. So, doing miniseries and, sticking with television. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't think that's overstepping. I think it's something that I haven't even thought of, though. So it's really interesting.
Because a lot of what I subconsciously enjoy, like I'll be like, wow, I really loved like these 4 episodes of a show. And then I look and I'm like, they were all directed by women. Or I really loved this mini series, and maybe it's not directed by a woman, but it's written by a woman, or it's based on a book that a woman wrote, who executive produced the series and directed like half the episodes. So it's just something that I find myself doing more research, and then I realize, wow, like a lot of the stuff that I love on TV is directed by a woman. Why can't they be doing this in film? Like, why can't a woman who directs 6 episodes of a Marvel superhero series, why can't she direct a Marvel movie?
Yeah.
Like, I know it's a different caliber, but, right? Oh.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's doubly frustrating if you're fans of the genre too, It's because it's like, like I said, like I just love this genre. I just do. There's something about superhero films and these big, like all-encompassing like science fiction genres or fantasy genres that I'm just drawn to. But I'm also like a really angry, outspoken feminist. So to not see that representation in the films that I love, it gets really frustrating. And I just think that we've been shown recently with Wonder Woman that clearly it can be successful. It could be the only successful thing your studio does even. Mm-hmm. And I just think, I just get frustrated too. That's a good way to sum it up.
Yeah, because like the thing I liked about Wonder Woman, and I was just thinking about this and Star Wars and everything, is like how Wonder Woman was able to interject a romance that wasn't overbearing, but was very sweet and like really hit to the point of those characters and kind of shed light on who they are. So it felt very organic. And of course, it was Patty Jenkins who did it. But then you have like Star Wars, who like does the bare minimum with romance. And I feel like if you got a woman in there, oh my God, like I wouldn't have to like feel so weird about shipping Reylo, because I shouldn't, but I do because there's nothing else in there. So there's my little rant.
That is some insight on your shipping preferences for Star Wars, and it's fine. But I get it. It's like I feel like it wouldn't be all subtext and like the cast being like, oh yeah, romance is there, and it's like, where?
Yeah.
It's not. Whereas I feel like, and not even to say that like women know how to do romance better or whatever, but they know how to do relationships in a way that feels
exactly
organic and built in. And I think we need that in these big budgeted films.
Especially in the Marvel films. I mean, remember that random kiss in the like one of the Captain America movies?
Yeah, that was dumb.
I was like, really? Like, I didn't even get that at all. Like, there was nothing leading up to it. It was just like,
and it was like Peggy Carter's granddaughter, and I have so many issues with that. And like, so yeah, if that's one you're thinking of with Captain America and Sharon Carter.
Yeah, Sharon. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, no, I agree. That's weird. And I also thought the kiss between Finn and Rose, right? At the end of the Jedi. I was like, where did that come from?
Oh, I hated that.
Yeah. And I really like both those characters, but I was like, this makes no sense to me.
Exactly. And I feel like, I mean, yeah, not to say like only women can do romance, because that's not true, or that's the only thing they can do, because that's not true either. Yeah. But I feel like they can understand just sort of the dynamics and of a relationship and how they come together in such like stressful moments, which, you know, these big budget movies kind of all exhibit. It's like one big stressful moment for these characters. Yeah. So
and I think they understand why those inner relationships can add a layer to the action, you know? Like it heightens the stakes if you're worried not just for them staying alive, but also what their life means to other characters.
Right, exactly.
So I agree. We just, I mean, this is so obvious by the title of our podcast, but we just need more women to direct these films. And it would be so easy to do it, and it just pisses me off. And one of the things you noted were these big films that had debut directors like Up, Maleficent, Wreck-It Ralph, and Snow White and the Huntsman, and Tron Legacy. And it's like, where are they finding these guys that aren't doing anything, but somehow are like inspiring studios to prove that they can? And sure, most of these made a decent amount of money, but like, let's not pretend that Maleficent, Snow White, or Tron earned a lot of love. Huh?
We're in any way groundbreaking films.
And like, if people loved Maleficent, if I loved parts of Maleficent, it was because Angelina Jolie was really good. It was not because it was directed in such a way that was captivating. And I was like, who is this guy directing this? I couldn't give a shit. Like, I was just distracted by the makeup.
And I found out that all these huge movies were directed by men in their directorial debuts because I was doing research on, like really, really expensive films. And I came across a bunch of articles that were talking about the most expensive directorial debuts of all time. And some of them were pretty dated, a couple of years. But all of them were on here, like $200 million in your directorial debut.
It's just they're allowed to fail
like,
up, and it's so aggravating. And it's like, I feel like most of these guys are still having significant careers in some level, whereas if this had been Ava DuVernay's first film, and I keep using her because I really loved Wrinkle in Time and it's still in the back of my head, but months ago, I guess. And I feel like if they had given her one of these films and it had bombed, they wouldn't have given her another. And that's my problem, is that men are also allowed to fail and get more films. We did an article on the site about how, who is it? M. Night Shyamalan or whatever has done so many bad films and he keeps getting them. So, and I just thought of one recently and I just can't remember. So I'll write it in the article for this, but it's just like, I feel consistently, it's like, again, based on their promise, like, oh, well, they maybe did something bad this time, but it really isn't their fault. And look at how many good things they've done in the past. Let's give them another. And women directors are not granted that luxury at all.
Yeah. And the only one out of this list that I can understand the most of, like, why they would hand someone such a big movie that costs a lot of money was Robert Stromberg with Maleficent, because he was, he is a production designer, and he won an Oscar for production design. Okay. But you haven't directed anything.
I know, that's still production design.
Yeah. And like Bob Peterson, he was a voice actor. And Joseph Kosinski with Tron Legacy, he did computer effects and directed commercials. So it's just like, and then you have your female film directors where they've made 6 movies and they're just now getting an opportunity for $100 million plus budgeted.
Or you have somebody like, if you're talking about people who are in different fields in the film industry, there was like Reed Morano, who was a cinematographer first. And it's still like, she's won awards now for The Handmaid's Tale and whatever. And she's still getting these indie budgeted films, which maybe is her choice. But, I'd be curious to see in a couple of years if she's yet been offered something on a larger scale. Because, it's another thing where it's like, well, they've done really well in this aspect of filmmaking. I'm sure they'll be a good director. And it always leans towards men getting those options. In my mind. I think we all agree on that.
Yes, yeah. It's not just in your mind.
In my opinion, at the end there. Yeah, do you think things are going to change? Do you think Ava DuVernay getting that New Gods movie and Patty Jenkins getting to actually direct her own sequel, which shouldn't be like surprising, but you look at Twilight and how Catherine Hardwicke didn't get to continue with the series she started, directing at least, and it is kind of groundbreaking in a sense now. Like, do you think things are going to change, or do you think people are just going to talk a lot in the industry about how things are going to change and then nothing happens? Because I'm a pessimist about that specific thing. And I feel like I tend to fall on that side where I'm just like, they're going to use it as a moment and they're not going to execute any real action. But I would love to be wrong.
I kind of feel the same way as you. Yeah, I mean, I just can't. Like, I think change will happen very, very slowly, like at a snail's pace.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing is just to keep talking about it, because I feel like we go through phases a lot where we just kind of like talk about something and then we forget it and move on to the next thing. And that's just something that can't happen with this if we want it to change.
Yeah, I agree about the phases thing too. It's like, what's the like, kind of like the hot topic to talk about, you know?
Yeah.
I think it needs to be more than just a like fad movement. I think it needs to be something that's substantial and long lasting. And because at this point, it's been proven to Hollywood that women directors can make money, you know, off of their films, and they actually do it quite a lot. It's just they're still hesitant to like trust a huge series to them, which is ridiculous. But I understand I'm kind of talking in circles on that one. So if we're at the end of that, unless there was anything else you two wanted to add about it, we can kind of go to our closing. What are we reading, watching, or listening to? And I feel like I should just omit the reading part on my end because it's like a pipe dream at this point. But Gabby, do you want to talk about what you're watching?
So
Or
the
reading.
Runaway. Yeah, I don't know what I'm reading. Too many things these days. How about that? But I like to focus on Hulu's The Runaways, which I actually had watched a while ago. But I think it has one of the showrunners is a woman, Stephanie Savage, who we probably know from Gossip Girl and The OC. So if you dig those shows, you'll probably dig The Runaways. Just because it's a teen show, it's a Marvel show. But it's a little bit offshoot of the other Marvel stuff, I guess. And it's about these group of teenagers who kind of find out that their parents are kind of shady and doing some weird things. And they see how, and they kind of start to investigate it. And they're all like kind of like a Breakfast Club type of group, you know, one's a jock, one's popular girl, you know,
The
stuff
goth.
like that. The goth, yeah, the nerdy
My favorite
kid.
part is how they subvert who interacts with who and how. Those are spoiler territory things, so I'll watch out.
But it ends up being like, a very like kind of fun, interesting show. I mean, it was something I enjoyed binge watching and just kind of like going on this little journey with them. And I don't think it's like, you know, top of the line TV, but I think it's definitely worth like, you know, checking out, especially if we're going into all the Marvel stuff.
Yeah, that's good tie-in. I actually really enjoyed that one too. And it's like, I feel like I can't pinpoint exactly why. You know, like there was nothing that really stood out, but I felt like every time I put it on though, I was like immediately engaged with it. So I think it's just that tone. It's that OC tone. I feel like that kind of is seeping into it, like with the music and just the way it's shot and the dynamics between the kids. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to enjoy this regardless of the quality. But I think it is a good show. I just couldn't tell you like what about it makes me so engaged with it.
Right. It's just like, I guess it's charming in a way. I mean, I guess you just sort of get invested enough with the characters that you care to watch it.
Yeah,
to continue watching it.
And, you know, it is a more diverse slate of characters for a superhero property, which is nice and rare. And the parents don't like suck the life out of the show, which I was worried they would. That's a nice play on words, though, considering what they do. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I didn't mean for that to happen. I'm sorry if I kind of spoiled that for anybody. So I'm going through this thing right now where I'm trying to catch up on directors or films that I haven't seen in the past. And it all stemmed from the fact that I was mad that other people could compare Star Wars The Last Jedi to films that I hadn't seen. And I was mad that I didn't know what they knew, which I know isn't like the right way to go about educating yourself further. It shouldn't be like a competition, but it kind of felt like one that they didn't know I was in. So I've been going through like Filmstruck, or I've been going through directors that I'm interested in that I just haven't touched on. So after watching more of Mira Nair's films over the last couple years doing this, I've been further going into her filmography, and I'm going into Gillian Armstrong's filmography. And she's the one who did Little Women, so clearly I have an affinity for her to begin with. But she has a lot of stuff, or she has a couple of things at least on Filmstruck right now. And then reading-wise, I have a book of poetry by that poet, Rupi. How do you pronounce her last name? Do you guys know?
I think it's Cower.
Is it how it's phonetic? Okay, Cower. Yeah. Mainly because I think I followed her on Instagram, and I don't know why. And I finally was like, I should read this because I'm seeing a lot of people talking about it. So I have both of her books, and I do plan on reading them. I swear. I'll give an update, I guess, next time. But so far, I'm not as like head over heels as I thought I would be. I don't know if either of you have read the book of poetries, her book of poetry, I mean, but yeah, those are kind of the two things that I'm really trying to focus on right now.
Isn't she like, wasn't she like Instagram famous first?
Yeah.
Is that why I follow her? I have no idea.
She had self-published Milk and Honey. And then it like blew up, and then she got a publishing deal. Do that, and the publisher reprinted it. And then she got her second book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you read it?
I did.
Did you like it?
I'm gonna let my silence just.
Well, because I'm not saying I love it.
I mean, she's young though.
She's what?
I mean, not to say. I mean, I was just looking her up now. I didn't realize how young she was.
She's very
like
young.
my brother's age.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, it shouldn't. I mean, your age has nothing to do with your talent.
No.
I'm not implying that at all.
No, but the level of success she has can still be irksome in a very petty way.
What I will commend her for is she knows her audience, and she knows how to connect with them and kind of craft poetry and like these micro narratives that, you know, a younger audience will connect with. I know that if I had read it when I was 16 or 17, I would have just been like enraptured by it. But,
yeah, it is. It does come across like somebody who thinks they're being really deep, and they're not.
Yeah.
So that's my thought.
That was all of us at that age.
Yeah. You know, I read Perks of Being a Wallflower, and I was like, oh my God, this means everything. Because I think I'm probably on the same playing field as you are, EJ, in that I think the hype is a little overblown, but good for a young woman having success.
Yeah. And because I love poetry so much, I think that anybody who wants to write it and can make it accessible to a massive audience, like, I'm just proud that she was able to do that. Because it's like, it's getting more people interested in poetry, and I love it. So even though it's not like my cup of tea, good on her for being able to do that. But in talking about poetry, I've been reading Savannah Brown's Graffiti, and she's a very good poet. She did a lot of spoken word poetry when she was younger. Also has a YouTube channel, but doesn't like regularly upload as much because she wrote her first novel, The Truth About Keeping Secrets. It's not coming out until 2019, but I'm rereading her poetry to kind of like amp myself up for that, because this is her first it'll be her first piece of prose. So yeah, I really like Savannah Brown's poetry. I think it is more of the genre of like accessible poetry, but I think she dives into like really good themes and explores female sexuality and explores female emotion. And I think that she touches on a lot of good feels I'm not being very articulate, but if you didn't like Ruby Kaur, and want something a little bit more,
I've already written it down.
Yeah, a little bit more like, ooh, this has a little meat to it, but isn't like super crazy. I have no idea how to interpret this. Yeah, Savannah Brown's Graffiti is really good.
Yeah, well, it's because I'm always trying to like, again, feel like I'm a more educated person. I start reading like poetry and I never know where to start. And then I'll just go read like that one John Keats poem that I like a lot. Yeah. Or I'll watch the movie, which is preferable to me.
Oh, God, cry, tears.
You know?
Yeah.
So I just like, this was the way I'm like, oh, everybody's talking about this. This seems like the cool thing to do. So I'm going to get both books. And now I'm reading it. I'm like, ugh. This is
it's not a female writer, but if you are serious about getting into poetry, Derek C. Brown, he has like a billion collections of poetry. He is phenomenal.
I've written that one down too. I will let you know what I think.
Start with Strange Light. That collection of poetry just rocked my world.
If anybody doesn't know, AJ is a poetry enthusiast, apparently.
Oh, I love poetry. I write poetry. It is, if I could just write a poem every day and just like lounge around in like caftans and like drink chamomile tea, I would.
That's wonderful, though. It does sound really nice life. I hope we all strive to just be able to write from home in whatever leisure wear that we choose. At least I do. But, okay, so thank you all for listening to another episode of Finding Her Voice. Next month, we'll be tackling animation, which I am actually like super stoked about because I love animation and I love female directors and I love adding the two. And we're going to be focusing primarily on Brave and Persepolis. So obviously, if you haven't watched them, watch and then maybe follow along. And yeah, you can find us at theyoungfolks.com. You can find us at Finding Her Voice on Twitter. You can find me at Allison AJ on Twitter. Where can they find you too?
You can find me on Twitter at Gabrielle Adele.
And you can find me on Twitter at AJ_Caulfield.
And make sure to rate, review, give us comments. Nice comments are preferable. And happy listening. Thanks.